Thank you. So again, I'm Melanie. I work for the Mystic River Watershed Association, and I'll be helping to manage the CBOs, the community-based organization programs. And then I'll pass it to Sasha.
Great, thanks, Melanie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sasha Scheideroff. I'm a clean energy and climate planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Our regional planning agency serves 101 communities in the greater Boston area on a variety of topics and to help our region be a more livable and sustainable place. And I'm one of the project managers for COVID Safe Cooling, and I'll pass it to Jeanette, my colleague, to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Jeanette Pantoja. I'm a public health planner at MAPC, and I'll pass it along to Brooks.
Thanks, Jeanette. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brooks Winter. I work with MAPC's Clean Energy Department, and I'll be supporting on procurement of cooling equipment through this program. So thanks. Over to you, Melanie.
Great, perfect. And then if we could just share the objectives of this workshop, please. The next slide. And so first we'll be making sure that we all have a shared learning and understanding around all of the combined challenges that extreme heat poses on our public health due to climate change. We also want to increase our creativity and innovation in project ideas in regards to extreme heat. Right now, there's not that many, there's not a huge robust program in regards to dealing with extreme heat in the Boston region. And so it's really important for us to think creatively and innovatively, especially since we are based in the Boston area, and people outside of this area tend to look at us for those innovative ideas. And we want to also encourage and enhance collaboration among potential grantees and encourage those partnerships, as we know that really influences and increases the benefits of this program and the strength. And then we also want to strengthen project implementation, its impact and evaluation. And so that way, all of the programs that are selected can be sure to be implemented in the best way and evaluated. Next slide. So this is a precursor to what's going to happen later on. So we just want to make sure that we are prepared for that. So later on, we're going to be breaking into breakout rooms. And so we will have 3 breakout rooms, one focused on indoor cooling, another on outdoor cooling, and the third communications, or just a mix of the 3, or if you're undecided or have just another idea, you can join that room. And so if you could please, to make it easier for us to sort you, rename yourselves to include the number before your name of what breakout room you want. And then if you can't rename yourselves, you can just drop in the chat what room number you'd like to join. So again, number 1 is indoor cooling, number 2 is outdoor cooling, and number 3 is communications. And so to rename yourselves, you can just hover over your own little video square and then press the 3 dots, and then in the drop down, put rename. And so if you could just all do that, or again, drop it into the chat, that would be great. And then I'll pass it over to Sasha.
Yeah, I'm just going to give folks a minute to think about this. I do want to let you know, just reiterate that this does not commit you to any sort of specific group or project, but is really just for the purposes of discussion and brainstorming and idea creation during today's workshop. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to the program overview, but please, if you have other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat bar. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the COVID Safe Cooling program And many of you were involved in this program last year, and excited to also see some new faces and new organizations during this workshop today. So this program really came out of last spring, early summer. We were seeing a lot of concerns across the region around the upcoming summer during the COVID pandemic. And many municipalities and organizations had strategies for cooling that included things like opening cooling centers or having people be able to have access to libraries, senior centers, or even public places like malls. And with the social distancing requirements and some of the challenges with COVID-19, we really wanted to support communities in thinking through this challenge of how do we help folks cool down and get cooling during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then when we also dug into the data that we have both around COVID-19 impacts as well as extreme heat and urban heat islands in Eastern Massachusetts, we saw that there was a real correlation and connection between those communities that were hardest hit and most impacted by COVID-19 and those that experienced some of the worst heat and urban heat islands in the Commonwealth. So this project grew out of some combined interest around this. The Barr Foundation provided emergency funding for MIRA and MAPC to launch this program as sort of an emergency stopgap last summer. And we worked with a set of communities and community-based organizations to kind of make some steps in the direction around cooling. Obviously, we're in a different place than we were last spring in terms of the pandemic, but the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic is still ongoing. We obviously have some hope as the vaccine rolls out and as our numbers kind of decline, but we expect that this summer there will still be social distancing requirements in place. People may or may not feel comfortable leaving their homes or going to cooling centers, and that we want to continue to provide a space and technical assistance and funding support for communities to provide COVID safe cooling opportunities and maybe try out some new ideas and think creatively about how to provide that support to communities. So in this round, we are going to be working with the same eligible communities, which include Boston, Brockton, Chelsea, Everett, Lynn, Lawrence, and Revere. Brockton and Lawrence are not in the MAPC region, but we are excited to continue to work across Eastern Massachusetts and work with you both in the community-based organizations and municipalities. So we have two separate tracks. MAPC will be managing the side with municipalities, and MIRA will be managing the community-based organizations. This year we have $500,000 in total funding, which is split across the two tracks, and that we anticipate, similar to last year, that the range will be between 30 and 50K per project. So just a little bit about the program timeline. So right now we're in April, April 1st. Have not had any pranks pulled on me yet today, but we are, this is our official program launch for the year and our idea workshop. After this, we'll be releasing our expression of interest form. That is a simple 10-question survey just to fill out to respond around what kind of technical assistance or needs and ideas you have, with the idea that you will then be able to work with one of us on the project team to really create your project ideas and work together collaboratively in pulling together a project proposal, which will be released in May and due on May 21st. And so there's a menu of options in the expression of interest around what kind of assistance you might want. We also want to flag in May, so next month, in addition to the project proposals, we'll be hosting a heat preparedness week the last week of May to do a communications push before Memorial Day weekend on the unofficial start of summer, so that hopefully we can get ahead of things in terms of communicating around heat and what to do during extreme heat events. Project proposals due May 21st with a rolling deadline afterwards. Hopefully then we'll be able to make decisions and do contracts in late May, early June, with the idea that everything will be contracted by June 15th so that you all can launch your projects and start procuring things that you might need and working towards things, the project. So then we have the summer, July through September, as project implementation, and then project wrap up and reporting and evaluation. This year, we did also want to allow for projects that might also include extreme temperatures in terms of winter temperatures. So heating during the winter, like utility assistance that might occur then. So while the program is still mainly focused on summertime cooling, if there's a program or project that addresses both heating and cooling, or really thinking about heating, we want to hear your ideas about this. So again, we just introduced ourselves, and our project team includes Mystic River Watershed Association with Melanie being the co-project manager, leading community-based organizations and lead on group facilitation. And then myself, Jeanette, and Brooks from MAPC leading on supporting municipalities. We do have, as a slightly larger organization, we have a lot of in-house technical resources, including like procurement, policy, and arts and culture. So depending on your needs, we would try to match you with what those needs are. And Brooks on the procurement side will also be supporting community-based organizations that may also need procurement support. And then Bar Foundation has been our generous funder for this program, and they have provided guidance and the program development stage, as well as communication support. So before we get into program examples, I just want to pause to see if there are any quick clarifying questions. And I haven't seen any in the chat, but if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat box or unmute yourself quickly. Okay, great. What city for the grant? So the municipalities that are eligible are Brockton, Chelsea, Everett, Lynn, Lawrence, and Revere. For Boston, we sort of need to discuss. Last year, Boston was not eligible due to some of the other grant funding they had received from BAR, but we may be open to that option this year.
And just to clarify, this is funding for the city of Boston, but CBOs based in Boston are still eligible to apply. But if the city can actually get funding is a question for BAR. Thanks, Andrew.
So it can be any like municipal department, whether it's like the mayor's office, public health, parks and rec, DPW, planning, or school department. Or then community-based organizations that are based and work within these 7 communities.
And municipalities and CBOs will not be competing with each other for funds. We want to make that really clear. So we encourage you to collaborate.
Yeah. Another question, how will you divide the total pot between CBOs and municipalities? It's split almost 50-50, so 250 and 250. And then within each pot, we sort of make those decisions based on like how many applicants we get from in each pot, I guess, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna hand it over to Jeanette to talk about program examples, but if there's additional questions, I can answer them in the chat, and we'll also kind of circle back to these next steps as well towards the end of the workshop.
Thanks, Sasha. I think Melanie will get us started with examples from last year's grantees, and then I'll review some from outside of the region.
Perfect. Thank you. And if anybody else has questions, you can just keep dropping them into the chat, and we'll try to get to them either as they come or at the end. And so we want to share a couple of examples from last year, and then Jeanette again will get into outside of our region. And so for outdoor cooling, there were several projects that installed hydration stations or water fountains within their municipalities. And so these were community-based organizations that worked with municipality representation to install that. And so that will increase better hydration in the summer and be helpful in terms of that public health, as well as incorporating tree planting into residential areas and public spaces. And so tree planting can help increase shading in that area, can help with the urban heat island effect and reduce cooling, as well as just not permanent or temporary shade structures that could be installed for the summertime. Next slide. And so for indoor cooling, we had several partners apply and get funded for AC and fan distribution, so personal cooling equipment, as well as other personal cooling equipment that people can wear to cool off themselves. And so this is helpful for folks who perhaps haven't been able to afford AC units or fans or other personal cooling equipment in the past, and can help in that short-term public health benefit. One organization partner in the Boston area, Garrison Trotter, partnered with the City of Boston, the Public Health Department, to work on a program that not only gives ACs to people who need them, but who also come in to the hospital or their local clinic for a heat-related illness. And then they are, or it's put in their public health record that they have heat-related illness. And so it's better to track them to see in the long term, did this AC help, or did this fan help, or did this strategy help? And that will be really beneficial, especially if we're thinking about ACs or fans as a healthcare device. Another great example is weatherization in the home or small businesses. And so again, we're needing to better insulate our homes and other buildings in order to get that place cooler in the summertime. And so a couple of organizations worked to help people sign up for Mass Save to see if they were eligible for that upgrade, as well as get support for their electricity bills. Next slide. And so several of the projects combined indoor cooling with communications or outdoor cooling with communications, as it's really important to help the public understand their public health outcomes due to extreme heat. And so these were in various forms, such as the picture that you see on the slide of a video that was created in multiple languages, including in Spanish. To let people know about the Mass Save program, and then also health impacts due to extreme heat. And so MAPC also provided flyers to let people, to make people aware of the different programs that were ongoing so that the program partners could actually just edit the flyer and add their logos and change their description around. So that included flyers, brochures, and then a couple of organizations also led webinars around extreme heat. And again, this was done in multiple languages. And I will now pass it to Jeanette.
Hi, so a couple of last year's grantees and people attending this event asked that we share examples from outside of the Boston region. I'm going to share a few that I uncovered. We'll send this presentation to you later, and there'll be some additional slides with additional examples. This is an example from the Bronx led by Interborough Partners. They essentially created an outdoor cooling center in response to most of the cooling centers in the city closing. All they did is, it's a set up a 100-foot long bench, used shade from the trees, put out movable seating, and a series of large outdoor fans, and a line of overhead nozzles that sprayed mists of water. It turned out to be incredibly popular. Despite the pandemic, people are still eager to find safe ways to socialize. I don't expect that this summer will be any different. Next. So the city of Philadelphia for about 50 years and facilitated through their out of school meals program in the summer has operated these play streets. And so they basically close the street to traffic and then bring out play equipment and provide lunches and snacks to encourage safe play and nutrition for kids in various Philadelphia neighborhoods. This summer, they adapted over 100 of those play streets and provided cooling equipment to play street volunteers. The cooling kits included umbrellas, tents, cooling rags, super soakers, and misting fans. Last year, a lot of cities in the Boston region developed slow streets or did a similar activity of just closing streets to allow for safe pedestrian activity. This is one potential way to program that. Next, please. Oh, and this is an example from Red Hook. And so they actually work very closely with the community in order to identify different sort of adaptations. So included misting tunnels, shade at food distribution sites, an outdoor library. Next. And then in terms of indoor cooling examples, what we saw in a lot of cities across the US, very similar to what happened here, a lot of folks kind of coming together, fundraising in order to distribute fans and AC units to folks in need or communities most likely to be impacted by heat. This is another example of a very strategic kind of health-focused partnership between the Rhode Island Alliance for Healthy Homes and the Asthma Control Program. They used funding from their asthma control program to provide AC units to high-risk asthmatics. And they're currently doing an evaluation to understand kind of what the long-range impact of that is. Next, please. And we saw a lot of cities also kind of taking a very specific communications approach of hiring social distancing ambassadors and doing mobile outreach. In some cases, they were also handing out COVID care kits that consisted of sanitary equipment, water, face masks. I could imagine how this could be adapted in order to also provide information about heat risks and move on. Thank you. Great. So back to Melanie.
Great. Thank you. Well, I hope everybody's wheels are turning and either if you weren't decided are starting to think of a project that you'd like to do within your community, or perhaps this is giving you ideas on how to expand on it. So it's very exciting. And we will be sharing these slides and recordings after the meeting. And so if you want to look at any of these projects that have been done elsewhere further, you can do so, and we will help provide those resources for you. And so a couple, oh, Andrew, I see your raised hand. I'll just give you an opportunity after I just finish my little spiel about project recommendations. And so as we mentioned earlier, you can definitely mix and match. And so if you go into the breakout room for indoor cooling and then you decide to do a mix or just to do outdoor cooling, you can certainly do so. We also want to reiterate that collaboration is really important. And so both among your municipal partners or your community-based organization partners, but also between municipal staff and CBOs, even though you will be applying for different funding streams. It is really important to just know what each other is doing within your municipality. And it's also really important for you to think outside of the box. So are there any public art organizations or youth groups or things like that that you'd like to partner around this work? Definitely, please do so. Evaluation is really important for us since this is in a way piloting different innovative projects that could deal with extreme heat in the public health realm. It's really important for us to know what's working, what's not working, and we do hope to provide you all with some baseline evaluation measurements that you could then take and help to evaluate your programs. And so it's also, again, along that line, it's important to think about resilience to multiple hazards, not just one around extreme heat, and long-term resilience. And so if you're thinking about an outdoor cooling strategy, how can we implement this so that it can benefit the community in the long term, or how can we help amplify this in the long term within the whole region? So the more information that you get, the better, and the more forward thinking that you are for your projects, the better the outcome. And the last one that was made incredibly important last year is definitely start early. We're hoping that we are starting early on our project management end, by giving you this information now prior to the cooling season. But procurement of personal cooling equipment is can be a long process. And so if you're thinking about doing that, definitely get in touch with us, or we'll get in touch with you to make sure that that goes as smoothly as possible so that everybody can get those AC units or fans, etc., installed when it's actually hot out. Would the team have anything to add in regards to recommendations?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back to two of the points that you said around evaluation, or just really trying to take advantage of opportunities to learn. So, one of the questions that we get most around this work are, what are the evidence-based interventions to address heat resilience? What are the best practices? And in all honesty, the evidence base is still pretty shallow. And two things we know for certain, that it's going to take a combination of multiple strategies to address this hazard, and it's incredibly context specific. So whatever the research has told us might work in Phoenix won't necessarily work in New England, and not all solutions will work equally across communities in New England. So we encourage you to be creative and to really, as you develop your projects, think about how can this help us evolve our thinking about how to better prepare our communities into the future.
Great. So I turned off the screen share because we have a few minutes for questions before we go into our breakout rooms and activities. I believe Andrew was on deck. Andrew, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone who is on this call. I must say big up to the team for bringing back this grant. We were part of it last year, and we were the arm of the outreach for the city of Brockton. Kudos to CREW, the collaborative partnership we created. So Melanie, we are the protege for collaboration on this grant. Guys, check us out. CREW and ACF, City of Brockton. What we find when we do the outreach, it's important that we, and you stated it in your presentation, Melanie, and you talk about it, Jeanette and Sasha. Definitely the outreach is needed, especially for various communities. We responsible for Caribbean American community and the African American and immigrants. And big and mostly who are going to need it the most, vulnerable population, which is the disability persons. So it was great that we did a lot of work, but one of the things I hope you guys would look at is more funding for outreach, because why? With outreach, we need to capture the data too. That will help us for sustainability, where we'll be able to follow up and do stuff with those who have received the AC. So definitely, I would have loved that. And other than that, great work. We're delighted to provide support for them. As I said, I'm in charge of Caribbean American community, so my expansion is vast. Several cities that I cover. So I look forward to being on it again, working with CREW and also working with Boston on a project for disability persons. So I will reach out to you guys. Thank you very much. That's enough of me. Other people need to come on. Have a great one, guys. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a great example of the importance of partnerships and reaching to your community-based partners so that you get community involvement and community participation. So this was a collaborative effort between CREW, communities responding to extreme weather, and the Authentic Caribbean Foundation, as well as Self-Care Inc., all in Brockton. And so we appreciate that. Thank you so much. You brought up a good point, Andrew, around making sure to include time, so personnel time within your budgets, which is something that you can do with this grant. So you can put in your budget time for outreach or project management, implementation, etc. Great.
And we also have resources on the project team level to create template communication tools. So as we had a template flyer last year, we're planning to update a social media toolkit. But if there are additional template communication resources that would be useful, please let us know so that we can start working on those this spring in advance of the summer. In that we did also get some of those resources translated into multiple languages as well. So we can work with you to kind of create those needs and those templates so that you don't have to recreate the wheel, but can just kind of build off of what we have.
Great. How about one more question and then we'll go into our breakout room. So I see Ethan's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you all. Yeah, to that last point Sasha just made, those templates for the brochures and flyers were super helpful last summer. Like one of the biggest, most helpful things, because we were able to just not spend a lot of money trying to find translators and time, and we were able to devote that money towards actual cooling strategies. One potential thing that could be helpful, blending communications with the actual implementation of cooling stuff, would be some kind of pathways to avoid negative unintended consequences. So there's obviously a lot of discussion now about ecological gentrification and what happens if you start making all these shade gardens, and depending on how they're built, So it'd be cool to have some idea or yeah, pathway, I guess, of how groups can navigate being in a position like, hey, we want to build shade infrastructure or cooling infrastructure, but we want to bring in community members to help design that. So you end up with something like the 100-foot bench with the misting and stuff that works out great for the community, but we don't end up implementing a really fancy looking shade or rain garden that could have unintended consequences, you know, years down the road, increasing property value or something. So that's obviously like kind of very popular in the conversations that are having today. So it could be good to have a guideline for groups that are interested in implementing real physical structures and how they can do that in an equitable fashion.
Yeah, so our arts and culture department is bringing their own funding to this work. You know, Sasha and I have been working with them closely the last couple of months, and they are offering additional technical assistance to any grantee that might want to partner with a local artist in order to implement their cooling solution. I had hoped that we would have some materials ready in time for this. They're still definitely in draft form, but I've been working with arts and culture to develop a sort of implementation guide for folks that want to do like arts integrated heat resilience work. And they have, this is something we've been talking a lot about, and they have some really good insights. Can definitely follow up on that, Ethan.
Okay, great. So I think most folks are back now. I hope you all had good, fruitful discussions and idea brainstorms and starting to think about this issue of cooling. You know, when we started thinking about this project for this upcoming year in February, when we still had a couple feet of snow on the ground for some of us, you know, sometimes it can feel very far off, but it's actually just right around the corner. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the immediate next steps. So as we mentioned, we this year have a expression of interest form that we would love for everyone to fill out. And again, it's just a simple form with your contact information and then a few questions about your project ideas and what you think you'll need assistance on. And so we'll release it today and it'll be due on Monday, April 12th. And the reason why we're doing this is because we want to be able to have initial sort of technical assistance meetings with everyone who's interested and to talk through your project ideas. And if you need support either in like idea creation, brainstorming, finding collaborative partners, if you're partnering with folks, or you know, even creating your budget, or as Jeanette mentioned, if you're interested in creative placemaking and working with artists, that we'll be able to provide some of that assistance up front before you like submit a proposal with a budget saying we're doing X, Y, and Z and it's going to cost this much. So we're hoping that that kind of TA process will happen through the month of April, and then we will release the sort of formal notice of opportunity for the funding in early May, and then have that due a few weeks later by May 21st. And then after that, we'll make decisions and be able to move into contracting. So I will send out we will send out this link to the form, and I'll also put it into the chat. But that will be released and kind of the immediate next step. After you fill that out, then one of us will be in touch with you based on kind of what your needs are flagged to kind of start working through what those needs are. And I think that's our last slide. So we have a few minutes for any additional questions, and I'm gonna stop sharing and put the things in the chat box.
You said that the presentation will also be emailed out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep, we'll email you this presentation and the recording and then the link to this application tool. Does anyone, or rather the expression of interest, thank you. Does anyone have another question?
I'll just add that if you are here representing a municipality and don't see CBOs from your municipality, please encourage you share the opportunity with them, and vice versa. If you don't see someone from the city that you've worked with represented here, please encourage them.
Great.
And I guess just to clarify, Sasha and Melanie, that the expression of interest form and the technical assistance that comes with that is optional but encouraged, right? So we don't want that to be like another hurdle to jump over for grantees, but we thought that with a little bit of extra time this year, that if you want it, the project team can be available to help you scope out your projects and sort of set you up for success there. And you'll see it's pretty short, it's pretty streamlined. It's just yeah, it's just to get a sense of what you're thinking about and how we can help in the lead up to the submission deadline. So no pressure to fill it out if you know exactly what you want to do and you're just going to get to work on writing up your proposal. That's totally fine, but we're here to support if you want it.
Yeah, and then another point that was brought up in my breakout room was if people are submitting their expression of interest, it's also an opportunity for us, the project team, to see where there could be possible connections and points of collaboration. And it will be a good way for us to foster that connection building. And so again, not required, but strongly encouraged. And that way you will get the best outcome, hopefully, for your project.
And it may be that like you have a 1 hour call with us and feel done, or it may mean that you know, you need extra support and assistance and we work with you. You know, I think we said up to 5 to 8 hours that our project team could provide in terms of this idea creation phase. The full proposal questions haven't been released yet. Those will be released that first week of May, but I will say that'll be very similar to the questions last year, and that again, we don't want the proposal to cause barriers to entry, so it'll also be pretty streamlined as well.
Great. Does anyone have another question? And then if not, I think we can get a few minutes back into our schedule.
Yeah, I just have one quick clarifying question. You might have already answered this too. So the interest form, we fill that out and you all will be contacting us to schedule a meeting? Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, and if you fill it out, you know, well, tomorrow's Friday. If you fill it out tomorrow, then we can be in touch as early as Monday or Tuesday. You know, if you need a little bit more time and fill it out on the 12th, then we'll be in touch after that. But the EOI is sort of more of a rolling, like, let's start this conversation with you.
Alrighty. Last call. Great. All right, I think we can close out. Thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate your time and we look forward to your proposals and what you can do to help keep everybody cool and safe this season while being COVID safe. So thank you. And if the project team could just stay on.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Good to see you all.
Bye. Have a good one,
Thanks so much.
guys.
You too, Andrew.